Am I like doing that for a living? No, but it's an important part of my portfolio. Sure.
If I'm the second largest telecom company in a particular country, I'm really fucking scared right now.
We want to see you buy some absolutely outsized non-crypto companies and totally crypto pill them.
I don't like to give advice, but hopefully it's been useful for you.
Welcome back to The Roll Up, your home for technical talks and open conversations that shape the modular future. Nothing on today's show is to be construed as financial advice. You can see our full disclosures list at therollup.co/ventures. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode after a quick word from some of our awesome partners.
Redstone modular oracles are available on 50 plus chains, trusted by over 100 clients and over 6 billion in total value secured. Visit redstone.finance to find out more.
Welcome back to The Roll Up. We have Santiago Santos today on the program. Welcome in, Santi. GM, sir. Welcome to the Golden Bull.
GM, Andy, Robbie, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Been a long time listener on Empire as well as just follower of your journey. I think I first got wind of you maybe during like the CryptoPunk bull cycle last run. I think you were kind of early there. Yeah, that was a wild time.
It was wild. NFTs, DeFi summer, and then NFT mania, whatever you want to call it, was crazy. Nothing really
Dude, I
prepares you.
faded that so hard, man.
Yeah, what is fading it? I mean, like, yeah, whole conversation, but yeah, it's NFTs. I can understand, people like still fade him, but I guess NFTs are back.
Yeah, I think that we want to get into that a bit. I think obviously Pudgy Penguins just dropped their token announcement. I think that kind of pushed a little bit of fire into the market. But just like real quick, Santi, it's your first time on the show, and I was recently watching a pod of yours that was around. I think the thumbnail was super clickbaity. It was like, "I want to be the best crypto investor in the world" or something wild. Is that true? Like, what is your drive behind all of this work that you're doing? And have you always been competitive, like as a young kid in sports or something, or like what drives you, man?
Why wouldn't you want to be the best in your discipline? And it's crazy because when you ask most people what they aspire to, they'll either give you a number or they'll tell you something. It's like, why wouldn't you? It's like, I appreciate we're going to talk about probabilities here. Yeah, buying a lottery ticket, low probabilities. But if you don't buy the ticket, you're never going to win. So you have to buy the ticket. And so, like, if you don't believe you can go to Mars, then you're never going to go to Mars. So you have to believe it to put everything in motion. And yeah, have a process, everything. But yeah, absolutely, I believe it. I mean, I'm not delusional about it. I'm not going to be depressed about it if I don't get there. Like, what is success? Like, I've been focusing more and more on the game I'm playing, and it's just it's very introspective. But yeah, of course I want to win, and I can I be the best? I mean, I'm mindful and cognizant that it's a very competitive field, but yes, 100%. I don't think I ever said it in that podcast like verbatim, but you have to believe it. If you don't believe that you can be the best in a particular discipline, then you're never going to get there. And the challenge, both the challenge and the challenge about where we're living in an age where you can compare yourself at a global scale since day one. That was not true for prior generations. It was very localized. You want to be the best in your town, you want to be the best in your country, but not on a global scale. And that introduces anxiety to the equation and it could be very anxiety inducing, because you're comparing yourself in this industry to people that punted peanut and went from 500K to 65 million. And you're doing here, putting in the work. You've been here for multiple cycles. You haven't really made that life-changing money or whatever. And it could be very paralyzing, demoralizing, frustrating. So you really need to focus on the game that you're playing, the process. Otherwise, you're going to get carried away. But at the same time, the beauty of this is that you can actually compare yourself at a global scale. So like even if you didn't have the opportunity to go to a great school, to live in a city like New York that's more competitive, more global, now you can see it, right? And I had the privilege of being exposed to very competitive environments early on in my career. Like I went to Boston, which is a very multicultural, like very human capital dense environment, academic environment. I went to Harvard Summer School when I was 15. Like, and so for me, like before, said differently, if you always think that Harvard's the best place in the world, and I had that sort of fantasy about it. But as soon as I went there, I was like, okay, like it's real because you identify with people there. It's like these are not aliens. Like there's something you see something of yourself in these other people that was so distant. And so I'm lucky because I had the opportunity to go to Harvard before college, I didn't go to Harvard or college, but that's just one example of like then you believe it. You're like, I can be here because you see yourself in others. And so similarly, I went to investment banking and at JP Morgan, which I thought was the best group within the investment bank, but I had to be there to say, fuck yeah, I can thrive in this type of environment. It's not easy. You have to work there hard to get there. And that's like now you extend that to crypto. Crypto is an environment where like you've never had like ideas and capital like converging at the speed of light. Like that's like amazing because open source systems like you really value information on the edges. And so if you're smart, you don't have to go to Harvard. You don't have to go to JP Morgan. If you are smart, you will get discovered faster in this industry than any other industry in the history of the world. In the history of humanity, like it has never been easier to be discovered on a global scale with capital. And so you sort of invert and you say, there's really no reason why I couldn't get far. I've hired 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds that I never met uh, at Verify, like Nick. I didn't care if he had gone to Harvard. I'm not hiring right now people for my new fund, new venture. I don't care about your resume.
It feels unique in that sense that this is the closest to a meritocracy that we have in any other industry. That
100%.
that was part of the attractiveness, at least for me, maybe Andy as well, is that this was an industry we were going to college. Andy and I, that's where Andy and I met, and then coming out of that, it was like, well, you go anywhere, you're going to need 3 to 5 years experience, right? Or you go here, and industry is only 3 to 5 years old. You're on the same level playing field as everyone else, and you can go much farther. And it really felt like the air of equal opportunity, right? And
Mhm.
it is
And
really
unequal results is the key
exactly
thing here.
No,
It's
yeah.
you.
I'd say
It
Yeah.
is what you
non-linear,
make it.
non-linear. But yeah, 100%. Like that's the beauty of this industry. Like America for me is the best country in the world because it is the closest thing to crypto. Like crypto in America, it's sort of like it's sort of match made in heaven because America is the only place in the world where people actually care more about what you think and who you are, not which family you come from. If you come from old money, new money, all these bullshit parameters. It's like I don't care if you come from money. If you're an idiot, you're not going to be taken seriously. And that's beautiful about this country. And by the way, they also celebrate success and failure. Like if you're not failing, like there's actually something about like super powerful about this idea that you can take outside risks. That's not true in Japan. That's not true in Mexico. That's not true in Latin America. Most of Latin America. Europe is stuck. The continent hasn't innovated like in a century. It's stuck in this colonialism like era of like Victorianism, and they're still holding on to that because that's the only thing they have. And so they make these like stupid things about like, oh, you're old money, and so they glorify that. It's like America is like the only place in the world that actually like really celebrates that innovation and risk-taking culture, and it's beautiful. And crypto is that at a global scale, and you could appreciate why younger generations will like love this space because it's very refreshing. But when you like you can talk about like the anon culture is powerful in the sense of like I don't care if you're what color of skin you have, what gender preference you have, sexual orientation, none of that. It's like, are you smart? Are you contributing on chain? And there's a very clear way of contributions mapping those and being rewarded. And open source systems are beautiful in that sense, but like you have to have a token. And that's what people that are not in the industry that are critical of crypto never really understand that open source with a token allows you to accrue value to the people that are contributing. And it's more meritocratic, it's more equal, fair distribution, and that's super powerful, incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah. I have a question. You mentioned early on, and it was obviously being competitive, playing the game to win. And I think a lot of the things we talk about in this podcast are probably applicable universally across industries. But you mentioned that you're playing your game, you're choosing your game, and you're playing it to win. What is the game that you're playing? Some people are in it for the tech, right? Some people are in it for this or that, right? But what is your game?
I'm incredibly grateful and lucky to be alive in a moment where I don't think there's ever been a point in the history of humanity where like we're seeing this convergence of technologies, primarily crypto and AI, and that really is transforming how we live. Like when I was born, the internet didn't exist largely. And now like the last 20 years have been super transformational. It's only going to get like the rate of that transformation, like instead of 20 years, like in 5 years it's going to be I believe it's going to be totally transformational. And so I think you really want to lean in on that on the frontier and I think for me that's crypto. Not AI, I'm not technical enough. It's not biology. Like AI will impact other industries, but my belief is that humans are not really good allocators of money. A lot of the people that have the capital right now, it's a coordination problem, and I think you can this was sort of Peter Thiel gets to this idea that like we've innovated in the world of bits but not atoms. Like nuclear's out of favor. We haven't really innovated on travel or transportation, like certain things that are just it's a coordination problem. Governments are not really good allocators of money. Large like large allocators are also not. They're risk averse. They're playing this pickety game of compounding capital. I'm not afraid to lose money. I'm always like in search of money because I have a lot of ideas. Like why like if I had another if I had like 5 billion, I would I would totally fund nuclear. There are people that have it, but they would rather buy a boat or they would rather, I don't know, do nonsense with it. And so I generally think that I can on the margin be a better allocator of a router of capital into the areas that are just overlooked, neglected, and and that's what really drives me. Um, so the best way that I can do that is still in crypto, and that's why I continue to be in this industry. The moment I don't believe that to be true, I'll probably move to something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean with allocating capital comes risk, right? Of course. I mean that's like crypto is inherently more risky than other asset classes from the outside perspective looking in. Now, from my perspective, I tend to think that like holding some Bitcoin in somewhere safe, whether it be custodial or in a ledger in a safe, etc. I think over a long term span, that's probably safer than holding fiat currency. But others wouldn't agree. Others think T bills very safe, fiat currency is very safe. Now, a wise mentor of mine also said, in business, in life, and investing, it's really not about how well you can play the game necessarily. It's about picking the right game. And I think that kind of applies to what you're saying here with regards to crypto. But even if you pick the right game, and if you're swinging size, you are going to get emotional. You are going to have to deal with the ups and downs of crypto, especially. So, like when you're playing this game of investing in crypto, when you're allocating capital, which I think the community knows that you've done well. So, size is being deployed. How are you managing your emotions? Like, how are you managing your own human psychology? Do you have rituals? Do you have things that you practice? Journaling? Like, what are you doing to manage your anxieties and kind of like day to day life of being a crypto investor?
One thing very specifically, I open source my brain because that invites criticism, and that ultimately I put it out in the open, and it's visible. What really kills you are the risks that you minimize or that paralyze you. And the internal dialogue is very it can be good, but also really destructive. And I've been there. I made a ton of mistakes. I'm happy to spend hours talking about mistakes. I've recorded episodes about that. So, but again, it's open sourcing it. Writing is very useful to organize my thought process, but I did long form and then I got more and more into short form, which is Twitter, because I want to get my ideas out. And now I'm starting a new fund. Is it always perfect? No, it's difficult. And so I want to tweet about that. I want to document the journey. And I think when you oftentimes like we look at these very successful people, I'm not comparing myself to the likes of like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or Peter Thiel or whatever, but like you only see the bright side of it. You only see the you only see the biography, the headline, but you don't really understand the process, and you really should like really focus on that process. If you really go talk to them, like the closest thing you have is like Founders Podcast, right? Like he really goes deep into the journey of these very successful people. Most of them had very traumatic experiences. Most of them have near death experiences. Like Musk, how many times did he punt his entire stack and was like SpaceX was like weeks of going bankrupt. Amazon like was weeks before the market crash. Had they not raised that, they would have gone under. Like we should like focus more on that because otherwise you don't really fully appreciate like how hard it is, and the process um is complicated. Investing is a hugely psychological sport. And so I think where I myself and I've seen observed others make the worst mistakes is it's not so much you could be successful, but it's like when you compare yourself against your neighbor. When your neighbor's making more money than you, it kills you. You do dumb shit. You put on leverage. It's very difficult. So for me at this point, am I lucky? Yes, of course I've been very lucky. Like I'm in a position where I trade less money for more relevance, but you have to get to a certain level. Like for me, the most important thing is finding meaning in what I'm doing. And again, I consider myself very lucky because early on in my life, I discovered this industry called crypto that I think is the most impactful socioeconomic transformation of our time. AI is super impactful, it is, but like humans are social species, and underneath the social element is coordination. The most impactful pieces of technology have allowed us to, as social species, coordinate better. Language, um, like language, just communication in general, the printing press, radio, the internet, transportation, the LLC, like this, all of these pieces, very groundbreaking pieces of technology, have allowed us to coordinate better as species. Crypto is like that next wave of coordinating better as species. And so for me, it's I wanted to get very quickly to a point where I could make decisions and play a game, not because I wanted to get to a specific number and think about it, but to free myself from that and then start thinking about the impact and the relevance because that gives me meaning. And for me, the game that I'm playing is feeling fulfilled in whatever it is that I'm doing, but also being compassionate enough with myself that if an investment doesn't turn out the way it is, it's not destabilizing. I'm not going to lose it all. You insulate your lifestyle, and then because that allows me to take on more risk and put myself more in that edge of frontier to be taking big swings. And it's not necessarily about like how much you're punting in a particular investment. It's more like it's a time. It's how much time you can dedicate to something.
Yeah, I mean, I think more concretely than to kind of wrap that into the lens of actually dealing with a couple of situations that I'll lay out that I think all of us and as well as everybody who's listening have dealt with, which is one, you get a trade right, but you size it way too small. That is just some of the worst like outcome possible because you only have a couple of those like those generational cycle trades. Okay, so that's one. The second one is you size it right, but you sell way too early. That's also just extremely, extremely tough to like mentally deal with because you often want to buy back or you, especially in crypto, it's very volatile. So those two situations, and then I think the third one is just simply like selling way too late, just like going full round trip. And so like these three situations can be extremely mentally taxing in size. So like for those who are listening in today's cycle now, building off this kind of a more abstract mental model of kind of build of investing in public, documenting, open sourcing your brain, kind of maybe even building a strong support group, right? Who can kind of help you with your decision making or at least with your emotional processes. How do you deal with more specific investing woes in the past or going forward, like those kind of three scenarios that I laid out?
Yeah, great question. I don't think you should be sufficiently uncomfortable, but not overly uncomfortable because again, it only gets harder if you just if you punt your entire stack, if you put all your money and you don't have alternate sources of capital, if you don't have a buffer to lean on if things really go south, like again, you never want to do anything that puts you out of the game. You're going to be more likely to make mistakes if you use leverage. Using leverage is a ticking time bomb. You will die at some point. Why would you do that in a space that it might take another 5 years or 10 years? Like you always want to invert and say, I always want to be uh, you never want to compromise your ability to play the game that you love, and therefore you then minimize like you then stop doing so many things that are going to put you closer to that edge. And so on the sizing piece, yeah, it's something that most people and I initially didn't think about much. Um, Now I'm more systematic about my sizing. On the venture side, it's always if I'm not willing to make a position X% of my portfolio, then I haven't done enough work. I don't understand enough, so I'll pass. Um, and so I want to I want to size a venture investment where if it does on the upside case like 100x or whatever, it will return a decent amount of the fund and it will have been worthwhile. The other component is you have to re-underwrite the thesis. Like when I joined the industry, collectively Bitcoin was at 65 or 80 bucks. It was like a billion and a half industry. Collectively, crypto was like a sub $5 billion industry. I had a whiteboard. And I was like, oh, if I was comping it to like SaaS companies like, oh, if it only gets to the valuation of Salesforce, like 10 billion or something, this was a 10x, it's great, and then I had a whiteboard. I kept updating that number. It went from like, went to 10 billion, then went to 50 billion, then to 100 billion. You're like, what I mean? Like in that process, it's so difficult because it doesn't ever move in the pace that you think. Like, it's like sort of like, things move really quickly. And the market gets ahead of itself and whatnot. But yeah, as you think about like this particular moment in time, like the market's clearly re-rated very meaningfully the last couple of weeks because finally crypto moved from an enemy of the state bucket to the innovation bucket. It's never been in the innovation bucket. That requires you to re-underwrite your thesis about where this space is going. Like, do you truly believe in scenarios where collectively the non-Bitcoin component of crypto will be an order of magnitude bigger than Bitcoin? I'm here because it will be. At some point in the next 50 years, I will make this bet that the crypto dominance, the Bitcoin dominance will fall to the point where there may be even a network that is bigger than Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is a very particular um, commodity that is sort of like the pessimistic side of you says it's an escape hatch to modern monetary policy and fiscal irresponsibility. And so Bitcoin working is almost like a very pessimistic scenario where like shit really hits the fan. And I'm more of a optimist, and I believe that the more interesting facets of this technology are allowing us to coordinate better, and that is smart contracts, and that has an impact in, said differently, the market cap of gold is vastly smaller than like the entire economy of this world, and you are effectively, you're addressing that market, and that's at least an order of magnitude bigger than gold and has more utility, and utility drives value. And so I think some of these smart contracting platforms will be, I think, bigger than Bitcoin. Now, it might take 10 years, so I'm not going to use leverage. I'm not going to be impatient. You know, we all have I have an, think innately, like you sort of lose patience, but I never want to put myself in that super uncomfortable position where I have like an expiring option, which is leverage, or putting all my life savings into something. But I will size it where if it does work out in a probability weighted scenario, it returns my fund and then some. But the other really good advice is insulate your lifestyle as much as possible. Have alternate non-correlated sources of income, whether it's rent, a normal job, something like that. Because when I insulated my lifestyle, I put some money away where I was like, I never have to work a day in my life. This is outside the industry that I love. I've been in a position to take far more risk, be more systematic, be more calculated, because I know that no matter what, like I don't have to think about that. And I've been in a process over the last like 4 or 5 years of minimizing all kinds of distractions from my brain that decided where I'd want to live, how I want to live, and really creating an environment where I can just dedicate most of my computational resources, which is in my brain, to focus on just meeting entrepreneurs, backing them, and now, of course, a new chapter of like starting this private equity fund. But like, it's minimizing all the other stuff.
You gave a great piece of advice in there, and it's non-financial advice, which is play the game that you love, which hits back on our the way we started this podcast, and then insulate yourself so that you continue to play that game and play that game, win the game. But play the game that you love. And so as you're thinking through this process, and I mean, there was a couple of scenarios that Andy mentioned as part of that question. One of them was with regards to sizing, and I think you mentioned sizing relative to your lifestyle, relative to this insulation, that once you have that set, you insulate yourselves and you size appropriately. And then also part of your decision making process on where to allocate that size. The other part of that in those scenarios was timing and time horizon. And so when you're thinking through, I think all of us are here, at least on this podcast, are here thinking in decades. And so some of these theses take quite a long time to play out. And so how do you balance shorter term opportunities that are available with decade long opportunities, and then potentially even longer time horizons?
Yeah, great question. I think after I do like a certain type of return, I'm sort of mindful of the probability stacked against me. So if you always do, if you're constantly doing 2x every month, like you're become the single most successful investor in the history of humanity. Like, am I going to be that person? Likely not. I do want to be the best investor, but like, you know what I mean? Like after that, like it's not you. The market's just like too hot, and so you sort of like recalibrate your thinking. You take risk off. Like it's not sustainable for those moments of time we're all been there, like NFT summer, DeFi summer, to like be yield farming at like 2% per day. It's like it's not, the gravity at some point like takes it, has an effect on that. So yeah, I think after on the venture side is more systematic. Like after I do a certain type of return. I de-risk principal because that allows me to then fund the next wave of startups at a lower valuation. So like if I invested a $10 million valuation that goes to 100, I'll take principal off now because the probability of it going from 10 to 100 is, I think, for that to do another 10x is that probability is lower. Now I'll re-underwrite my thesis. So like, when I invested in Lend when it was like a sub $10 million market cap, DeFi started really to work, and they were like, okay, for me, the thesis initially for investing in Aave called Lend back then was Compound had just raised a round, and it would value at 100 million. So I said, well, Lend is farther along. It's not Silicon Valley darling, but it will just converge on Compound's valuation. That's a 10x. So you size it like that. And then things really started working. And then and then Aave just like really took off. TVL grew, DeFi became a category. Um, and then and there, you're like, the position grows to a point where you're like, it is an uncomfortably sized part of the portfolio. You make the hard decision to size it marginally down because from a portfolio construction standpoint, like it's just the right thing to do. Um, the problem is in crypto, like we see these single shot like success, which is like the guy punted $75 in a peanut or 25K in a peanut, made 65 million. Like, it's all in a vacuum, you know what I mean? But like you have to think about holistically, like professional money management. I manage my family office now. I manage it I document my investments. I document my decisions to move positions or not. But Andy, you asked me something before we started the podcast. Like, what am I doing now? Like, I'm not like doing much. Um, I am on the margin, like take some risk off here and there, or move stuff around. But like for me, like the biggest change I've done structurally in my portfolio over the last 4 years since I left Verify was like coming to the conclusion that Solana was going to be far bigger than Ethereum. Did I time that at the very absolute bottom at like Sol hitting 8? No. But along the way, I re-underwrote the thesis. It took me a little bit longer. Like my lizard brain just like needed to like come to it, and I did more work and did more work, and then one day I just sold all my ETH, all of it.
Dude, that's nuts. Because you also
But
inspired me on the soul trade, like way back when on Empire. You just
yeah,
like something switched in your mind,
just
and
one.
you just started
No,
like you
just
were just like soul,
of course
soul.
it wasn't like a singular day, but I just came to that idea of like I'm very and say Solana is like now it's like a third of Ethereum's market cap, but back then I was like Solana was much smaller, and I was like, I don't need to believe that central banks get around this industry. I don't need to believe that all these stacked assumptions. For you to believe that Bitcoin goes to a million, you need to believe that like a lot of things. In my investment framework, I don't ever want to make investments that have all these stacked assumptions that you believe X, Y, Z, and then the outcome happens. For me, the Solana thesis was I don't see a compelling reason why it shouldn't be at least the size of Ethereum today on what I'm seeing. And then informed by the fact that like most investors, funds in the space have been legacy, most of their positions have been in Ethereum, as have mine. Like today, my venture portfolio is still, I don't own any ETH, but I do have a lot of exposure to the ecosystem because of my venture investments. Like it's like actually much larger than Solana. And I'm okay with that because it's not to say that I don't believe in Ethereum. I don't think Ethereum goes to zero. I actually don't think that necessarily Ethereum comes down from here. I just think that Solana converges on that. Um, and so I'm not, I don't want to portray myself as like an Ethereum fudder. It's just, I just get excited about what's happening in Solana, and I think there's a place for Ethereum, there's a place for Solana, there's a place for other um, high throughput blockchains, Avalanche, Aptos, Monad. Like I just generally think that most people, again, to my point earlier, that I believe that collectively these smart contracting platforms are going to be bigger than Bitcoin. There's going to be an opportunity for a lot of these chains to be successful. And it's not just modular or or monolithic. Like we're making these discussions not informed by usage. You know what I mean? They're all theoretical. I think all we can do as an industry today is really advance non-speculative use cases. And this is why, again, I'm starting this fund because I just got tired. One day I just woke up and said, most of the failures in my portfolio are companies that built something really cool technology, but no one cares. Or like crypto doesn't have a tech problem. It has a go-to-market problem. And you could say that the regulatory environment has been the blocker. Yes, in large part. But still, I would argue, by virtue of how normally technology gets adopted, like there are companies that still are on spreadsheets. They haven't even adopted like CRMs, you know? You mean like in today's day and age, there are industries like real estate that you still pay your rent in a check. Yeah, I mean, like technology takes as far for as much as we're connected as like in our social lives, like businesses are slow to adopt technology. And I just one day woke up and said, I am not willing to wait. I don't want to wait another decade for this technology to really to really be deployed. And I want to deploy that in size. And there's one way to do this. As opposed to trying to convince a business, I'm going to go and buy them. And I'll make the And so when I talk to people about the thesis, some of them are really get it. Most of them actually get it. Some of them are like skeptical. I'm like, well, you either don't believe the tech is ready today, which I could argue all day long that it is, or you don't believe I'm the person to do it. And I totally get why you wouldn't. But if you, it's sort of like putting into question why. And I think that the closer you look at some of these projects, deep in stablecoins, there's no reason why this tech couldn't be at scale. There's no reason why we couldn't have billions of users on chain. But
Yeah, I think
we're in this, yeah, yeah,
the smart contract thesis applies to if we're going to bring the whole world on chain, like we're going to need more than one chain. I mean, that's the whole point.
yeah, absolutely.
But we get infighting because of tech differences and cultural. Crypto's also just like
Look,
naturally very like tribalistic.
it's like the world of academia. It's very bitter and people fight all the time because there's no money on the line. These people are fighting for like prestige of like, oh, I'm the Nobel laureate and I have the right thesis and hypothesis and all this crap. By the way, most studies can't even be replicated. But the world of academia is like so bitter and you know conflicting and because there's no money on the line. But it's like people find a bear market, a bull market. Yeah, all these discussions kind of go away. But yeah, look, there's a natural sequence of like, you know, CapEx investment and then deployment, and then you stress test the tech, like no different than your phone. Like think about the first iPhone. It sucked. There was no internet. Like it was so expensive and clunky. But it was such a powerful usage that it justified the investment in cellular towers and 2G, 3G, 4G or 5G LTE. Like, and then we're gonna have faster. Why? Because you had Netflix, you had Uber. Like now we spend all of our lives in these phones, and so. What I'm trying to say is that like we have excess supply of block space, not enough demand. And I'm not dismissive of things. Speculation is super important for technological adoption, but I think we're at a point where we really need to look at ourselves and say, if we don't in the next 5 years really drive the non-speculative use cases, I think deepen is super powerful. I think stablecoins are deepen and stablecoins super powerful. If we don't really make a very concerted effort as an industry to drive that, we're going to have like severe drawdowns. We're going to have some sort of look ourselves in the mirror and say, where are we going? And I just, from where I am, where I think I could help the industry, to me, that was very clear. That's a sort of the calling that I got earlier this year. Now, I hope other people rise to the occasion too, but I want to do it.
We are definitely rooting for you, and we want to see you buy some absolutely outsized non-crypto companies and totally crypto pill them. One funny thing about you, Santi, is I asked you on the rooftop in Singapore what some of your best trades ever were, and I think
Oh
you
God.
said CryptoPunks and Whiff.
Yeah.
And to the average folk, that is just complete nonsense. Like you're telling me you made your best investments ever on a dog with a hat and an NFT. Like, how do you reconcile crypto's mimetic nature
Oh.
with this like speculative driven kind of work to like
Hmm.
also the value
Hmm.
of crypto
Hmm.
in the outside perception? Because I think we have this perception problem right now, and like I'm not
Hmm.
saying that you doing well on whiff and punks contributed to it, but I'm saying that other people will want to mimic your success and others successes, and that kind of leads to this flywheel. Like what is the like how do you balance the gains versus the perception and kind of like the meaning behind all this?
The reason I say whiff is not because I made the most amount of money. It's just because I allowed myself to change my mind on something. Because if we go
Interesting.
back 5, 6 years ago, or 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, I was very critical of memes. Naturally, you are because it makes it's like here we are trying to create the next world financial system, and a single meme coin like Doge is worth more than all of DeFi, and you're like, for fuck's sake. But you know, I changed my tune on memes. I appreciated them for what they are. They are an important onboarding mechanism. Um, they are, they have been, they will continue to be. And it's almost like it was just more of a, when you meet someone and you get triggered, that's your problem. That's not their problem. That's why you fight with your parents all the time because you don't want to see parts of your personality. But your parents remind you so much of your weak vulnerabilities that you hate it. But it's sort of a mirroring effect. And so at one point I said, it's like, why? What is it? Why do I have such a visceral reaction against memes? And then it was just really this idea that like I kept like it was at odds. It was this internal contradiction of like you hear me say that crypto is such a social movement and it's humans as species, coordinating species. Well, memes are the most powerful condensed forms of expression that people form around them, and it's like, well, tokenizing culture, like that's a thing. And but look, that you clearly have the Charlie Mungers of the world that like hate gaming, hate casinos, like I mean, I sort of just peeled back and said, I'm just going to see it for what it is. It's an important onboarding mechanism. It's not meme. So the criticisms around memes are more around it's a some meme coins are like very insidery and cabalish, and that's not a meme problem. That's an industry problem that over as we now think about the regulatory environment open end, we need to get better at creating an environment where there's proper information disclosures because that guarantees the integrity of a market. Like the role of the regulator is to create fair markets where like the access to information is to everyone, right? Companies file these statements, and I think that like I think we'd all agree that like integrity of markets is super important, and so it's not a main problem. You know what I mean? I don't have any. So I came to that realization. So I I allowed myself to change my mind on something. And it's like when I interview people or when I talk to people, it's like I always want to know, like, what have you changed your mind on recently? If you haven't changed your mind on something recently, it's like a huge red flag. I'm like, you seriously are telling me that as connected as we are, you're definitely not processing new information. You're just only want to see it's so sort of like confirmation bias. It's like so for me, it was just I changed my tune on memes, and then I've been lucky enough to, have discovered some of these memes, goat and whiff and stonks, all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, am I like doing that for a living? No, but it's an important part of my portfolio. Sure.
The
I'd like
meme
to
coin
ask you the
whisperer.
opposite of that question. What is something that you haven't changed your mind on since you've got into this space? Like you've underwritten your thesis several times, but like
Mhm.
consistently throughout from
Oh,
the time you
this
got
is
into now,
the
it has stayed steadfast.
it's the most important socioeconomic transformation of our time by
Nice.
far, by far. And AI is going to be super impactful, but there's something about crypto because I grew up in Mexico, because you see inequality. It just for me, it slowly just started to really, I keep saying I feel that I'm earlier in this industry than I was back in 2012. Why? Because back then it was just Bitcoin. It was just like digital gold. It was 10 trillion. Now there's something very like sobering, but not in that like there's something just very like just it's just sort of like a holy fuck moment where it's like this is working, and you see it align a path for this industry to be way bigger than 10 trillion. Um, it's like, no, you're going to transform finance and generally how we coordinate as species and the relationship that users have with companies, um, citizens have with governments. It's like it really is all encompassing. And the closer you are to these things, it's like you have to kind of start seeing it to believing it. And I think like I had an intuition that crypto as a whole was going to be incredibly transformational for many people. It was more narrow back then. It was like, oh, remittances, people get hosed by moving money cross border, and it's really the people that need it the most, like socioeconomic demographics that like get hurt the most in this current financial system. But now it's vastly larger than that. But it was that belief. I guess I've updated my views, but it was an intuition that it was going to be incredibly transformational. Um, and it was I remember writing an email to my dad asking him to invest in Ethereum and the ICO. I said this is the future of the internet, and it's like one of the best emails I've ever written.
That is awesome, dude.
Like, did I fully appreciate the technology? No, like absolutely not. I was like
Like,
naive. I was dumb. I still am. Do you have to be slightly like naive and like optimism is sort of like if you know everything, it's like your economics professor that is sitting there telling you not to buy a lottery ticket. Is like you're an idiot for doing it. Most of my professors never, they teach finance, but they don't invest in the stock market. There's something about you have to be playing the game. You have to be in the field. If you're not in the field, yeah, it sucks to be sidelined.
Did your dad ape?
You did.
Wow,
dude,
what a
I'd
king.
love to read that email. If you put it out there anywhere, we're gonna flash it up on the screen. If the screen is still just us three looking at
I
each
mean,
other, then
yeah, I went around like 2015, 2016 because I wanted to do super early stage venture, and I was in Palo Alto at the time at a growth equity fund, and I went around, talked to Sequoia, talked to Kleiner, and they put together investment memos, be like invest in Ethereum, invest in Storage, Saya, like all these like Bitcoin, and that was my thesis. Was I the earliest? No, even back then I felt I was late because Chris Dixon was already talking about it, Balaji was already talking about it, all these people were talking about it, so I felt incredibly late back then. Even then, it's like you always feel late to this industry because it's just there's always someone that discovered it earlier. It's the most important thing is just being consistent and perfecting your process.
Satoshi probably felt the same way. He was probably like, eCash has already come out. I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. Meanwhile,
Yeah,
here we are.
yeah, absolutely.
Santi, how do you reconcile or how do you reckon with this Ripple pump? I think it's one of the most hated pumps of the year so far. Just broadly, these Dino coins. I've seen these
Oh,
memes going around. Like we all thought retail was going to come buy our meme coins, and they just went back onto Robinhood and aped everything that was on Robinhood. Basically, like what's
yeah.
going on with Ripple? And like, what do you think about this kind of action?
SAFE is moving the world's GDP on-chain. With the introduction of SafeNet, SAFE is taking this to the next step very soon. Check out net.safe.global to learn more about how SAFE is moving the world's GDP on-chain.
Welcome aboard on our journey into the singularity. This is the endgame roadmap for Frax and Fraxtal, the new L2 out of the Frax ecosystem that is totally based on fractal scaling. Fraxtal is a modular L2 blockchain built by Frax with modular and fractal scaling in mind. Fractal scaling is based on the Mandelbrot set of fractal images, and it explains how L2s become L3s and the entire app chain lifecycle goes through its evolution. The Frax ecosystem is made of some of the top builders in the space and has stemmed from its OG days of the Frax stablecoin. It is now in the LST space, the LRT space, and this Fraxtal L2 joins the existing suite of Frax products, including Frax Swap and Frax Lend. You can see Frax Ferry, the bridge to go from any chain, Arbitrum, Optimism, or mainnet into the Fraxtal mainnet. Bridge your tokens and bring your Frax assets into the Fraxtal ecosystem. Join today to get the best out of Fraxtal. You are still early. Join today, take part, in our expedition into the singularity?
Oh, it's positive, I think. Do I believe that Ripple is sort of the best project out there? I don't know. VHS Betamax, like MP3 technology, like go to market again. Business development super important, and I'll give them credit for that. Um, any sort of evangelization of this technology is positive. I've taken a more just it's positive. Now you have to be doing some good, right? If it's just like a scam, definitely not. I don't think Ripple is a scam. Is it how I would think this technology? There's other projects that I think are more interesting to me. But yeah, it's funny because I just think well, it's an indication that like non-crypto people are back and they're interested. So just use it as a piece of information to re-underwrite. Now the question is, is that money going to flow into? But just Ripple alone, like added like what is it, 100 billion in market cap or something? No, no, was it not something like that? Like it was like
Yeah, it was
a
like over
two
that. It
x.
was like 150 or something crazy, I
It was
think.
150 billion dollars in market. Like you're like, I want to know who's buying that, and then it's like, I think some of the biggest mistakes I've done in crypto is just like not truly understanding how big these capital markets are, and like if you peel everything back, like most of the world's population doesn't have access to the US stock market, can't buy Tesla stock, can't buy Nvidia, can't buy Apple stock. Crypto allows normal people in like most of the world's population to invest in things other than their local, government bonds and real estate. Like you are waking up dragons everywhere in the world, and I don't think we've like truly appreciated, like we haven't been scratched the surface of like what that might mean. I think the US government finally understood, oh, stablecoins are really allowing the world's population to like drive an infinite bid for dollars. um and like tokenized stocks, like we haven't even gotten there as an industry. Like what do you think like will happen to crypto once you tokenize the stock market and everyone in the world with a click of a button can punt stocks? It's I mean? Like it's way bigger than 10 trillion is what I'm trying to say. Just patience. We'll
We're
get there.
underwriting the thesis in real time.
Really, no, seriously, we'll get there. Like it's just w- and by the way, the hard part is sometimes you have PTSD from a bear market and we're coming off of one, and so just remove it, take it off, go to therapy, remove it as quickly as like as quickly as possible. It doesn't serve you anything. Um, most of the time, like when you make a mistake, you fall as a kid, you get an F on a test, you have these traumatic experiences. Everyone tells you to learn from your mistake. No one tells you when to let go of it. I wish someone had told me earlier to let go of it, because once you learn, you don't have to keep thinking about it. It's this trauma that keeps haunting you. More emphasis should be, and I wish someone had, and it had to be my dad to like come to me years later and it was just sort of like this catharsis of like this release of energy that I was like, fuck, I can get rid of this. But it's hard. Like more emphasis to be placed on that. Like once you learn from your mistake, never look back.
Yeah, I think there's one really important thing that you mentioned in there, which was, you can choose your thoughts and what you spend your time thinking about, just like you choose the game that you're playing. And we get overcome sometimes about these things that consume us because they were so impactful to our psyche, but
Mhm.
it's a choice to let things go. Just like it's a
Yeah.
choice to choose what game you're going to play or what job you want to
Yeah.
take or what field to explore.
Yeah. Two things. Again, the name of my fund is Inversion Capital because I think that it's the most important mindset framework that I have. Like invert. You're going to be in your deathbed at some point. What's that obituary going to be? Why do people remember what you do? What's your legacy? It's not your number, it's not how much money you make, it's what you do with it. It's how you make people feel. Honestly. I mean, I know it sounds soft. We're out here talking about punting meme coins and punks and all this crap, but it's like, what are you doing? Like, are you finding meaning? And I've met really the most, I've had the privilege of like meeting like some of the most successful people. I'll tell you, man, they've struggled with the same bullshit. And most of the time, it all comes down to you don't find meaning in what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like just focus on that. Now, of course, I wish everyone in this world could be in a position where they don't have to think about putting food on the table. 100%. 1,000 fucking percent, yes. But after a certain level, trust me, most people think they want another 5, 10 million, 20 million, 100 million, a billion. You never stop. There's always a guy that has a better boat, you know, better wife, bigger, you know, jet, whatever. You can always compare yourself, and you want to go into that measuring contest, it will never end well. But I guarantee you, it's at the end of the day, you're going to just look back and say, have I done good? Not impact, but it's crazy. You ask people what do they want to achieve, and they talk about this impact thing. Just, I've now just come to, I want to do good. Now, if it impacts one person, that's enough. If it impacts 100, even better. A billion, great. But it really is just that. It's as simple as it sounds. Like, I want to do good. I think this industry will do more good than harm. It can certainly do harm, like every piece of technology, sort of the Prometheus myth. You bring fire to humanity, they can do agriculture, or they can, burn each other. But it's just sort of that. That's the bargain that you have with technology. But all you can do is just try to do, like, just do good every day. You have a choice, and also it's very liberating. Like, this great quote that I always remind myself of is, "You are under no obligation to be the person you were yesterday, today." It is so liberating because you have all this emotional cachet, and you have ego, and you have a perception of how people think about you, Robbie, who you are, and you, Andy, of who you are, and how people describe you. And you're like, let go of all that. Today, you have time, and you have the opportunity to do whatever it is that you want. If you're in a position to do that, God, that's incredibly lucky. You know what I mean? Like, that's amazing.
It's very peaceful too. It's like
It
there's so much
is.
noise and mental chaos that gets and it
Yeah.
consumes you at times if you don't let it go and you don't.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, hypothetically, someone's listening, is like, I just want to get to 5 million. I just want to make my first million, my first 100K, my first 1,000. You can always have these levels. It's like, why? Well, because I don't want to
Because you
think
want to
about money.
win.
Okay. No,
Because
okay, fine. You
that's
want
the
to
way to
win, you
win.
want to
The
feel relevant, you
obsessive,
want to
right?
feel validated, you want to be successful. I get it. But a lot of times people say, I want to get to a number because I'll change my life. It's like, yeah, honestly, don't wait to get to that number to change your life, because you can change your life today in ways that you might not even appreciate it. Simple things. Getting a personal trainer, having someone remove friction or things that are distracting, have someone do groceries for you, have a maid come once a week, have a simple things like have a personal trainer, once a week, get a massage once a week, simple things like this. Like, treat yourself kindly, have self-compassion. Like, a lot of times, like, the biggest, you're competitive, yes, you're a type A, you want to be the best in the world, all this stuff, yes, but if you don't treat yourself with compassion, you will not get there. And the problem is, it's like no pain, no gain. You should always be putting yourself in stress, it's like always full gas, one speed. Yeah, we get it, type A, but you have to have self-compassion, because you're going to make mistakes. Because, by the way, if you don't, it assumes that you have control over everything that is around you, and that's the stupidest assumption you could ever make. And I've made it in moments in my life, especially when stress is high. I want to control everything, and that really eats at me. And especially in this world where, like, technology and the world is moving really fast, you never, ever, ever want to assume that you control stuff. You always want to be able to change your mind and willing to change your mind, and not want to control stuff, because you don't control most of the things are outside of your control. And to think that you control stuff is the path to misery, because, oh boy, I mean, it's just ridiculous to assume that you're going to control stuff. And I think it's just really important to just know the difference between the things that you can't control and you can't control. And you can always control what you do and who and how you make other people feel.
Feels relevant. I got a massage the other day after surfing and it felt amazing. I felt great
I mean,
since. It,
that's 50
it, it
bucks.
didn't
In
cost much
Asia,
money.
that's $2. You
Yeah. So
know what I
definitely
mean?
worth it.
Yeah, it really is.
So Santi, understanding this perspective about like having basically your mental health in check and treating yourself without having to assign it to a number for your goals, and understanding this impact that you want to create. Do you apply the same rule of thumb when you're looking at early stage founders? Because from what I understand, and from my experience so far with Robbie on our ventures arm, we've basically backing the founder at the pre-seed and seed stage. It's like there's really no traction, sometimes no product, and
Mhm.
you're looking at the founder and you're like, is this guy gonna go and get this done? So like, are you also thinking like, oh, these founders should be taking care of of their mental health?
Oh,
And
yeah. Oh yeah.
or should they just be in the trenches all the time? Or even more broadly, like what do you look for in those early stage founders that is like, okay, X, Y, and Z, like check, check, check.
Mhm.
This, I don't even care what they're building. This person is somebody
Mhm.
that I want to put my reputation and capital behind.
Mental health is everything, because otherwise it's a yeah, you're not going to be able to go very far. Go read Djokovic, the very top three tennis player in the world. He had to go through this evolution where he at one point hated the game. He had to take a break to go back to his early childhood and remind himself of why he was playing and to rediscover the love for the game. There's a great also a graduation speech by Roger Federer that he did this year. And he talks about just the math, the numbers behind winning. He said, I won maybe for 51 or 56% of all the points I ever played in my career, and he's become one of the best tennis players of all time. And then you juxtapose, contrast that with the autobiography of Andre Agassi. He was like smoking meth because he hated the game. Was he a good player? Yeah, but it's a totally different contrast. Successful too. But yeah, I think it really starts from within. You have to find peace with yourself, be compassionate. And when I looked for a founder, I'm like, is this guy, is this particular, he or she gonna have the mental fortitude to drive through a wall and make this kind of like you just sometimes get a feeling for a type of founder that's like this person's not gonna give up. And a lot of times, most of them have had like very traumatic experiences in their life. And I'm always looking for, has this person had a deep trauma? And it's either most of the times a chip on their shoulder. It's a near death experience, so they will never want to go back to that spot. But mental health is super important. I wish we talked about it more. I think everyone should allow themselves to have someone in their life that is not a friend, it's not your parents, it's not your loved ones that you can openly talk about. I do it more in the open now with Twitter and invite all the, for me, that's therapy. I mean, running, cycling is very therapeutic for me, but also, I started noticing it in the podcast, which is probably the most fulfilling thing that I do now, or one of. That people really love when I open up and talked about my journey and not you know, just really going deep into my psyche and allowing people to see more vulnerable parts of my personality and my journey. People love that. Why? Because they identify with that. They see the human side of it, not a robotic side of, like this guy's an investor. Deep, deep, deep. No, it's like they want to see the human element of it. And honestly, like I would have done that earlier if I knew that. Now, I just came to terms with like you let go of certain things and you're like, I think the path towards finding love is allowing yourself to be vulnerable. If you're not, you're rigid, it doesn't fix anything. Now, I'm not suggesting share with the world everything you're thinking. There are filters and stuff, but yeah, just being a bit more open. But therapy's great because one of the in the after 2018 I went to therapy. I was like very depressed that I hadn't topped the cycle and whatever. I felt like a total failure to my parents that given me some money to invest. I didn't lose money, which is the crazy part. I didn't look like I was up like multiples. And my dad's like, "You're an idiot." I'm like, "Yeah, but I didn't time the top." And he's like, "Excuse me?" Like first, you know what I mean? Like it was so irrational, as many things are. But in the first session or second session, the therapist asked me like, "So what's your identity?" And I'm like, describe myself. I did investment banking, and now I do this thing called crypto, and he just lets me talk for like minutes, and he just cuts me off and says, "Yeah, but who are you?" I'm like, "Dude, I've just spent fucking 30 minutes talking about myself. So you're gonna bill me for this crap? Like, seriously?" He's like, "You told me what you do, not who you are." And he's like, "Come back next week and tell me who you are." I was like, "Oh, okay." And hobbies
Jeez,
were a
man.
big and hobbies were a big part of it. And allowing myself to like discover hobbies that I'd stop running. I was so focused. I'm like, oh, like crypto's gonna be huge, and I'm gonna like want to become a billionaire now. Like, it's like because why? Because you see Mark Zuckerberg and the Google guys, and they're not too dissimilar in age, and there's always gonna be someone that's like by some easy measure farther ahead than you are. What I'm trying to say is it's easy to come up with these qualifiers, it's easy to come up with these metrics of success. Are you a millionaire? Are you a billionaire? Are you a leader of industry? Are you a CEO? Are you whatever? Are you a founder? But it's like, no, it's like there is value in describing yourself in these non-arbitrary metals, because none of that matters if you don't feel comfortable with yourself or you're not at peace with yourself. And so for me, it was just very eye-opening to go on this journey of developing my identity. And honestly, that's been the thing that has helped me the most, because you kind of free yourself from the stress of, imagine tying your identity to the price of Bitcoin, or how many, it's like I would have had 6 heart attacks by now.
Yeah. But I mean, Santi, I
And
think a
so,
big part of that is the stuff that you talked about in the beginning, which is the insulation. Like
yeah,
if you look at like Maslow's hierarchy, right? These kind of self-actualization topics are much more achievable once a certain level of
oh yeah,
stability has been achieved. So like more concretely then, let's say you've done well so far in this cycle, or you plan to do well over the next couple months, into 2025. And you're gonna pull some money out of the cycle to insulate yourself. Like
yeah.
how do you go from like very little financial insulation, or just some, maybe you have some stocks or some assets or some other stuff. How do you go from like that to pulling out, either multiple 6 figures, 7 figures
Hmm.
from crypto markets and get to
I
that
mean,
insulated point?
uh,
Like
as a
what
rule
do
of
you do with
thumb,
that money?
as with startups, with your personal life, have at least 12 months of runway. I don't think anyone's ever regretted that. Whatever happens, you have 12 months to figure your shit out, kind of thing. Yeah, put it in whatever, something, earn 5, 6% on it. Fine. Then, if you're in a position to take more money, then you say, okay, you invert and you say, how much money do I need to never have to work a day in my life by earning the risk-free rate, 5%, 2%, 3%. And you do that. And then you focus maniacally on the other part. It takes more risk. Yeah, seriously. But what I'm trying to say is, but if you're in a position to change your life, I've never regretted taking money out and spending it with people that I love and experiences. Never. Now you can do the math and be like, fuck, I sold Ethereum at $2 or whatever. Bitcoin at 80, $100 or whatever. Yeah, well, you're still here. You know what I mean? Like, how many more years do you have in your professional life? If you live the average life expectancy, you have another 40 years ahead of you, 60 years ahead of you. Think like that. You're compounding, just, experiences, knowledge, whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that you're perfecting your process. You want to be making less errors of process, more, and errors of outcome, hopefully less, but you can't really control the outcome. You can always control your process, how you feel, how you document it. And I think over time, you perfect your process to a point where yeah, you can become the best investor in the world if you could. But you can't really control that because it might be someone that does that better. And by the way, how do you define the best? Is it how you feel? Is it the number that you have? Is it, I don't know. Could have been a guy in India that inherited like, an empire, and then is he the best investor in the world? He definitely has more money. So it's very subjective, I guess. Like, what is the best? I think for me, the best is being at peace with myself and always perfecting my process and minimizing errors of process that I make and perfecting my process. And if I perfect my process, probabilistically, there is a higher shot of me becoming the best investor in the world on an absolute basis. But on a personal basis, I'm optimizing for certain things in the game. I'm more and more aware of the game that I am playing, and it's a single game. It's a single. Yeah, markets are, you know, PvP, but it's a solo game. It's a solo sport. It's me competing against myself, kind of
Probably
thing.
why you like running and cycling. It's
Yeah, I love
because
running, cycling. Yeah.
you do those by yourself.
Yeah, you're always measuring against your time, and that is so instrumental in of itself. Like, again, when I started running, and I knew that I was a decent runner, not like elite. My frustrated dream is becoming a professional athlete. Bone density, body composition. I'm never gonna be that, or very unlikely at this point in my life.
Yeah, but you're quite tall. You're actually surprisingly tall, Santi.
Yeah, not as, yeah, I guess, but you know what I mean. Like, I wasn't born like anyways,
You've also
yeah,
chosen not to play that game.
it's correct. No, no, no. I did. I said, talking about the opportunity to be close to these type of people, like in where I live, all the professional cyclists. So I cycle with like elite guys, like the guys that go to the Tour de France. I cycle with them once or twice a week when they're not doing intervals. And the first time I went riding, it was just like this magical experience. I'm like, God, this is what it feels like to be like, a Tour de France. And we grab coffee, as good uh every good group ride should have. You always stop for coffee. And we're talking, I'm like just trying to get into their brain. I mean, you're like, God, you're like a national hero. Like people look up to you. And he's like, man, I would trade your life for mine. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I would feel the same way. You want to trade? He's like, yeah, we would trade. And it was just like really cool. It was just very it was a treat to be able to talk to these guys. And I think that they love what they do, but it's almost like I wanted to be a ski instructor, and then you talk to ski instructors, they're like, no, man, you want to be here on vacation with a ski instructor kind of thing. And you're like, yeah, I guess. Um, but unlike investing, being a professional cyclist or being a professional runner or athlete, like your life, your productive life is very compressed. It's like 2, 3 years at the peak. But investing doesn't have that. And that's honestly remarkable that we can, you're Charlie Mungers of the world, until the last day of this man's existence, he was like punching. He was there, and doing it exceptionally well. Like that's what I find amazing about investing and the learning curve. You never stop learning kind of thing. But like, I think for me, that's it was just very comforting to like just come to terms around that.
Yeah. So, Santi, just kind of want to go one more into this kind of investing game conversation, which is
Mhm.
something that I've really appreciated in life is that having an older mentor is super valuable for actually learning and skipping obstacles, basically taking shortcuts and not having to learn things the hard way. And I consider you a mentor in this investing game and in crypto. And I think our audience will as well. What is something that you can share with us today as far as a really tough lesson that you had to learn the hard way that others don't necessarily need to, or some sage wisdom that you can share with us so that throughout our investing careers in crypto, we don't have to learn something, just
Mm-hmm.
with big losses?
Yeah. Well, there's so many. I recorded a whole 2-hour segment on all my mistakes on Empire, but I guess the biggest advice that I could give that I had to learn the hard way. Coming to terms that I was not going to be the earliest or the first discoverer of it, but that I um like taking my time to form a thesis. And I think it's difficult in crypto because things, especially now, continue like the aperture of the space has gone so wide, and trying to like be an expert on everything or time the absolute bottom. And I think for me, it was very paralyzing because you see an asset like when I discovered Bitcoin, it had gone from like, nothing to $60, and I'm sitting there thinking I'm an idiot. Um, so I think like it could be very paralyzing. It was for me because there's something about like when you ask someone most of the time, they're like, when did you discover crypto? It's trying to get at this. It's like, how early were you? And I think we glorify the how early were you, not so much what you do after. Like, who cares if you joined in 2012? Who cares if you joined a year? Who cares if you joined today? It's if you truly appreciate this technology for what it is, again, I think you see it and you see a potential of becoming vastly bigger, or larger. I would have just wanted to tell myself to take my time and really focus on structuring, like developing really hardcore theses, um, and then allowing myself to kind of process information. So the other ones, of course, like, there's security, make sure that you have a secure setup so that there's sort of this idea like the longer you've been in crypto, like if you haven't been hacked, you haven't been long enough in crypto kind of thing. Just spend time on that. It's important. and and have a Horcrux model. Like it doesn't cost anything to have hundreds of wallets. different providers, minimize counterparty risk. If there's smoke, there's fire. Don't be afraid to move quickly, kind of thing. But at a more personal level, um, yeah, it would be probably disingenuous or unrealistic for me to tell you not to have a number. But and because, people want to free themselves from and own their time. But I appreciate I've been saying more than one thing, but yeah, I don't know. It's um yeah, I don't know. I don't like to give advice because I think every journey is different. But um and it's difficult for me to say something now because people will be like, well, yeah, it's great because he's already made it kind of thing. Um but yeah, it would just be insulate your emotional well-being. Financially, you don't necessarily, there are numbers that make it marginally easier to own your time, but it's yeah, just develop a process. And again, assume that like it's not going to be easy. Assume that it's going to be moments where you're really going to question yourself, or you really want to sell, and you really want to just leave or whatever. But just yeah, just develop a process where you have an identity outside of the space. You understand what you're worth and have your priorities set. And I don't know, man, like life's too short. Like it's not all about crypto. It's not all about what the price of Ethereum or Solana is. Um, okay, I'll give you this. I'll give you this. This is what I would say. You have 5 minutes left in your life. Who do you call? What, you have one phone call to make. There's always, for most people, there's always one that comes to mind. There's always one phone call you make, and it's usually someone that you haven't talked to in a while or have had some disagreement with, and you want to leave this world without having that burden with you. Um, make that call. And I heard it from, I think it was Sam Sell. He is one of the, if not the best real estate investor of all time. Sold his empire to Blackstone at the peak for like hundreds of billions of dollars. Sam, and it's what I appreciate in the from the Founders podcast, was miserable throughout the later, like last 10 years of his life because his mom passed away. And he was miserable because he had gotten into a fight with his mom many years before that, and they never made up. They never, he never said sorry. And so, looking back in his deathbed, he said, God, if I could change something, I would give up all of this money to be in a position to tell my mom that I was sorry. And he said, you know what the craziest part is? I don't even remember what we fought about back then. So I guess if I were to do something constantly in your life, just think about what that phone call would be and make sure that, because sometimes life doesn't give you that opportunity to make that phone call. Just live like you don't have that phone call. And you're just self-actualizing and just never, never live with regret. Never. Just make that goddamn call because you can do it today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's deep. That's a good one. Um,
I don't know.
we're gonna get you out of here soon, but
It's fine.
we want
It
to
is
ask about the
Friday.
fund. Um,
We
uh,
can't leave on that note. It's like it's Friday. People want to, yeah. I'm gonna go make a phone call right now.
yeah, right. Don't wait.
Wait.
Yeah, man, invert. I mean, there's so many lessons, right? And I appreciate you don't want to give advice, or you don't feel comfortable giving advice, but frankly, there has been a lot of valuable pieces of information here that you've shared on the call. Um, a lot of non-financial psychological ones that are just bigger picture items as well, which I particularly appreciate. Um, but yeah, the fund, I mean, this is something that has been a culmination of experience in your life.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, what is the thesis generally? I also
Hmm.
wanted to loop in a question from earlier, which is about staying patient, especially when it comes to some of these decade-long theses.
Hmm.
What are some practices, good habits that you have
Hmm.
that you employ in the fund? How do you
Hmm.
stay so patient? Generally, what is your
Hmm.
practice?
Well, you talk about my family office, the investment venture, and then I'll answer it on the inversion stuff because I think it was two separate questions there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the family office, my since I left Verify 4 years ago, I invested in like over 150 companies. Um, I've been super active. Um, for me, it's I want to find those people that are in it to. If I see a founder that or a team that is looking to positively impact the space, I'll most likely invest. I made mistakes. Sometimes I've misdiagnosed or misread a team. But for the most part, I feel really fortunate to be in a position to invest and allow people to kind of realize that vision and be along there, helping them in any way I can. Just more often than not, the founder really knows the answer. You just need to be there to be a sounding board, not to tell them what to do or when to launch a token. Um, but um, but yeah, that's the practices. It's position sizing. I think before 80% of my time is spent on, is this thesis right? Is it correct? You have a hypothesis, but um, now it's like 50-50. It's like the position sizing is equally important to your point, Drew. Like you could be right, but if you're not right inside, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And so focusing on position sizing and how that evolves in the portfolio is something that I think I've spent more and more time on. Initially, in my earlier on, like I did not, and I could point to a lot of mistakes around that. So position sizing is almost as equally, if not equally, as important as the thesis and being correct on the thesis. Um, you want to get paid to be right in a meaningful way. So yeah, focus on position sizing. And own this particular vertical, like at Parify we were very focused on DeFi. We obviously were very successful. um um and again, like you're not going to be an expert on all these ecosystems. It's like you know imagine like the early venture funds in the 1990s that were investing in the internet. Like, well, now like that's just like it can mean so much, and the industry crypto has grown so much. So be focused, be concentrated, um, in a way where like you can really own a particular category and be go deep, develop a network, and then because in early stage investing, it's really, are you going to get that call? Are you someone that founders going to want to work with? So reputation is so important. So that's probably top of mind. So does that answer like that part of the question, like in terms of how I think about processes, structures, and stuff?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And then the fun around inversion in terms of being like a culmination, I don't know if it's a culmination. It certainly feels like a calling. I don't think anyone's doing it. As I said earlier, I think for me, it's if you think about like Carlota Perez, like the technological revolution cycle, it's like installation, which is like the for early innings of a technology. Like we've been like over a decade, like iterating on around these pieces of technology. 4 years ago, I would have told you that the tech is maybe not there. Today, I have a ton of conviction that it's working. There is no reason why this tech should not be at scale 10x more. But Carlota Perez talks about like there's a turning point and then there's a deployment phase, which is it's sort of like sized equally as installation. But I don't want to wait another decade because you guys are here. Most people in their crypto journey, it's so amazing because I almost wish I went back to the first time that I discovered crypto. It's like the crypto journey, at some point you open a door and you see a way of doing things in the future that it's kind of really hard to come back, and you want to pull in as much people into that. It's like the line, the witch in the wardrobe. You open a wardrobe, you enter this magical world. Like that to me is like crypto. And it's sort of like to your point around being patient. It's like, well, God damn it, I don't want to wait another decade. And so for me, it was just this idea that there is a way to do that. And I think there is a way to compress that timeline because I have a lot of conviction. And it's really was Deepen. Like Deepen has given me my thesis is as follows. It's The beauty about Deepin is that it is such a compelling product. Stablecoins are, but if you're in the US, people don't really appreciate this. No one can argue against pound for pound if the product is the same, but it's cheaper, it's better, like the helium plan, like it's like 20, $30 unlimited, like it works. Like the value proposition of Deepin and some of these projects is so compelling. It's like no one, not even a crypto skeptic can refute it. It's like, are you an idiot? Do you like paying for more? Like AT&T sucks, Verizon sucks, like your cable sucks, your wireless sucks. They charge you $100 a month. You can buy Andrina for 20. Like eh, it's like it's a no-brainer. It's what I feel that the best technology is always like invisible, but it's felt. And crypto, that's the end state of crypto. It's that this technology is so impactful that most people may not even appreciate that they're using it. So I'm now less and less focused on trying to explain it to people. I'm just extremely focused on implementing it to the point where it's invisible. And I think that's the hallmark of great technology. I think that's what crypto is. It's an operating system. The problem is, I've been through the podcast and throughout my career, been trying to evangelize some stuff, and no one believes it. You have to do it. And I will do it. I will buy a company. I will transform it. It will be one transformation, and I will tell you, I took this company. It was a 2%, it was a 5% EBITDA margin or gross profit, and I took it to 20. And by the way, there's no other company in this industry that has 20% EBITDA margin. And they're all going to be like that Houdini effect. They'll be like, wait a minute, what the fuck? What just happened here? I'm like, what'd you do? Was it AI? It must have been AI. I'm like, no, it was one thing. It was crypto. And that will be, for me, that's success. That's what I want to do. And I want to get there as quickly as possible. So I'm very focused. I know sectors that I'm really focused. It starts with Deepin. And the nice thing about Deepin is once you're servicing a customer with if you're their mobile provider, it's such an entrenched product that then you can do so much with that. Then you introduce stablecoins. Then you give them the hardware for free, preloaded with all crypto apps. You want to get people on chain? That's how you do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'll sell you a mobile plan and I'll become the second largest mobile carrier in a particular country. 22 million subscribers. I'll buy that company. And then I'll roll on the back end something like Helium to save 75% on COGS. That EBITDA margin goes from 4% to 20%. Market's never seen that. And now I can play offense. Now I'll tell you, yeah, I'll give you this phone. Sure. You want it for free? Fine. But, it comes preloaded with some crypto apps. And oh, by the way, it's exactly the customer base that would want to use stablecoins because the ARPU's low, because they have remittances are huge and they want to hold dollars. And then you have tokenized stocks. And then, you know what I mean? Like you become the everything app. And that's my thesis. Like that for me, that's why I'm very focused on that and activating that user base. And it's in the millions of users, and I get incredibly excited about that.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Like that's my ultimate thesis about whether it's a fund or an operating company. It's I think it's fun because and I don't want to raise the small amounts because it's sort of like people are like, oh, why you want to raise such a big fund? I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to raise zero or nothing, but initially it was just going to be with my capital, and then it's like, well, no, the impact's the same. Like if you don't, it's like raising $1 and raising $10, it's exactly the same level of effort kind of thing. And so it's like if you can raise 10, why just raise one? If you can buy the second largest telecom company in a particular country, why not do that? Because the impact's greater, right? It's just sort of like I'm just very maniacally kind of focused on that. I do believe that tech is ready. I do believe that we can drive this change. I don't think that the current construct of cryptos, like building distribution is hard. We've been focused on exporting this technology from the inside out. It is just going to take us another decade. I don't want to wait another decade. I can be patient on many things, but because I see a way to do it much faster and inverting and doing the opposite, which is I'll acquire business, I'll tell management to fuck off politely, I'll replace management, and then I'll do the transformation. But you have to kind of get keys to the kingdom and do the change.
If I'm the second largest telecom company in a particular country, I'm really fucking scared right now.
It's like
So,
barbarians of the gate. No, I'll be
Lovely
polite.
play.
Be like, hey guys, here's a decent multiple. Go sailing in the horizon. Give me this asset. But you know what I mean? Like you need a spin. Most of the traditional world doesn't appreciate how impact. Everyone's focused on AI, and AI is going to be huge. But from a first principle standpoint, I never want to compete. And everyone, doing AI transformations, everyone's going to be good at. Everyone's going to do it. Some people better than others on the margin. No one's focused on AI. No one's focused on crypto. And team. It's like the classic innovators dilemma. It's like either traditional private equity funds or management teams or CEOs don't really appreciate how impactful crypto can be to the bottom line. Like today, not in 10 years. Like today, you can make these meaningful changes, meaningful reductions in costs. Um, so I'm excited. It's one of those things where I couldn't not like. I'm gonna do it. Has it been always easy and smooth sailing? Absolutely not. It's kind of a new chapter where I'm building. And not all days are super rosy. Sometimes people say you're an idiot. Not, I never want to give you money for this. This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And it's like, oh, fine, I guess. But a lot of things that we talked about in this podcast, I'm now implementing in a different dimension and capacity. But again, it's self-compassion. Like I'm allowing myself to do this. The outcome I necessarily can't control. Maybe it's too early. Maybe the strategy is untested. Maybe no one wants to give me money. I'm still going to do it, maybe in a different capacity, but I'm still going to do it. Why? Because I can't live with myself if I don't do it. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it. And to me, that was like, okay, let's go. Let's do it.
Yep, the shift from investing to building is definitely different. So welcome back to the trenches, man.
Hey, man, it's great to be here.
And thanks for
Thank you
coming
so
on,
much,
Santi. It's
man.
been an absolute pleasure, man.
Yeah,
Really great.
one thing the last thing I want to say that I forgot that I wanted to say earlier on. I've been incredibly lucky and privileged because early in my life I found these, to your point, Drew, around mentors. It feels awesome when not your parents, because your parents were always, unconditional love kind of thing. I was super, I appreciate some people can't say that. I had a incredibly privileged in the sense of just gotten a lot of love from my parents that allowed me to take a lot of risk. I always knew that I could come back and they would love me. And I appreciate not everyone can say that, and I'm very incredibly lucky for that. And I will try to do that for my kids as well. But I first need to find a wife. But nonetheless, or not, I guess. But I guess what I'm trying to say is try to find a mentor, and I think a hallmark of a good mentor is a champion because it feels awesome. And in this industry, it's so great because it's open source and people can discover you and take you under their wing. Like everyone in cryptos, I've gotten a ton of help, and that's a really cool part of this industry. Like you have so much access to founders and really good builders and talent, and try to find a champion for you. Like, and I think the easiest way to do that is like just develop a voice on Twitter, like, reply and you'll be discovered. Again, I think that's the thing that I want to impress on people is the odds of you being discovered if you're smart, if you want to put in the work, if you're driven, are really high in this industry. And there are people here that are, you can make a name for yourself, and it's not hierarchical. It's not that you go to Harvard, do you have certain qualifications? If that doesn't move you and inspire you, then I don't know what does. And I think you will find a champion. I was very lucky to have found a champion in my life that made me believe that I can do it. And I think just surround yourself by those kinds of people that will tell you, yes, yes, Drew, yeah, yeah, you can make the best podcast. Yeah, you can be the best investor. Someone ultimately has to walk you through and says, here's a lottery ticket. Maybe you'll pitch in a bit, but do it. And I think in this industry, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of really generous people with their time. And so take advantage of that. It's really awesome. And the industry, so we're getting started. We're scratching the surface. There's going to be opportunities to do so many things, and different use cases that we haven't even envisioned. And so be patient, try to do good, stay focused, play your game, understand what your game is, and allow yourself to, you know, make mistakes along the way. And hopefully they're not, mistakes that kill you. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I don't like to give advice, but hopefully it's been useful for you for folks. That's it. Find a champion.
For the love of the game.
For the love of the game, man. For the love of the game. Yeah.
Who's your champion? Who's your champion
Oh, I can
mentor?
tell you, well, I'll tell you why I know they're champions because if those things, I always know they're champions because if those things hadn't happened throughout my career, I would not have been here. And uh, it's like math teachers. math teachers can make you believe that you're either really good at math or bad at math. And most people believe they're not good at math because there's a stupid teacher out there that told them that they're not good at math. And it was the problem of the fucking teacher because they're not good teachers. You know what I mean? That's an educational system problem. But I'll tell you who my freshman year professor of finance, CEO at investment banking. She'd been super successful, and it has to be someone like aspirational like that. You really say, okay, this person's really crushed it. And she took me under her wing. I went to BU, which was not a target school for any investment bank. And she said, no, you can go. Where do you want to work? I'm like, I don't know. What's the best investment bank? She's JP Morgan. I said, I want to fucking work there. She's like, you can definitely get there. It's gonna take you. You have to do. But I had to hear it. It was just that. And it made me believe, as naive as I was, it made me believe. There was a lot of luck in the process, but she made me believe that I could get into the best investment bank in the world. And then within JP Morgan, the vice chairman of the investment bank took me under his wing. I don't know what he saw, but he just did. He would invite me to his Thanksgiving dinners. He would just, I was there working hard, and he took me under his wing and he believed. And I was like, okay. And that to me was like really special because that. And then I don't know, there's so many of them. I don't know why. I just been lucky in that way. Um, but yeah, like there's these people that it's not my parents, because your parents will always tell you you're great. It needs to be an independent person that you think is reasonably or very successful, and they'll say, yeah, you can go far. And I wish that everyone in their life has that opportunity to feel that because it is so empowering. It's like someone handed you a free lottery ticket and you're like, fuck yes. Like, let's fucking go. You know what I mean? It's like now it's on me. But having someone believe in you, whether it's a loved one or it just feels great, man. And I wish
Yeah.
everyone feels that at some point in their life. I was incredible. I have been very fortunate to have those particular champions. Find them, find. And doing the podcast, what you guys do here, what I do at Empire, I think for me, it's I came to terms that maybe this is the best way to do it at scale.
Facts.
Yeah.
I think so
So
too.
yeah, I think so too. Yeah. I mean, I think what you guys do here is amazing. Just podcast and general content, well, sharing these stories. Like the best, the most, the thing that I remember the most over the last 2, 3 years is people coming up to me at a conference saying, "Hey, man, I listened to this podcast. You changed my life." I was like, "Wow, I didn't think I'd say anything particularly special," but he's like, "No, man, but at that moment is what I needed here, and you allowed me to do X and Y." And I was like, "Honestly, you're giving me too much credit, but I'll take it, man. Like, it just feels great to hear that." And that's awesome. That feels just so great. It's the most wholesome feeling that it's just like really cool to hear it.
Yeah, we agree. I mean, recognition is always appreciated when you put a lot of effort into things, especially when you feel the impact, because sometimes it's hard to feel like the tangibility of what you're doing, especially in
Yeah.
crypto. Sometimes it feels, sometimes you question what we're doing here. And I think that's a lot of the speculative driven stuff that you were talking about prior.
Yeah.
Hearing that your work has helped somebody it goes a long way for inspiration as well to keep going.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's been many times where I wanted to leave this industry, but it's moments like those that just overpower and it's just full of joy and stuff like that. So it's great. It really is.
Yeah.
Dude, Santi, I'm so inspired. Thank you so much, man. We're gonna absolutely crush 2025 together. It's gonna be a
Let's do
massive
it.
year for crypto, for yourself,
Yeah.
for inversion, for Empire, for
Let's
the
do it,
roll
man.
up, and
Let's
I'm
do it.
stoked.
Honestly, there's never been a better setup in this industry, and I consider myself incredibly lucky to be alive in this moment in time. And you guys are here punching and so playing the game. So, yeah, I think we're all should feel really lucky to be in a position to do that. So, thanks for having me on, guys. Hopefully, it was helpful. And if not, you can just delete the pod and move on.
We're not going to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we can, I guess. But it was a treat, man. You guys, it was awesome coming here, and yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much for coming, man. Phenomenal.
Yeah, thanks, guys.